Hello! I'm back with another Best Books of the Year list, this time from the British newspaper The Telegraph, and they have a whole range of categories, but I'm just going to focus on their fiction choices because those are the ones that I am most keen on, and it's a really interesting mixture of books. A number of these books I've not come across before or heard mention in any other lists like this before. Some of them I have been wanting to read, and then a number I have read. 6 out of the 20 that they list I have read. So I'm going to read their brief descriptions of these books and then give any commentary that I have about them. And also just to say, I'm using a new microphone to make this video. So if you've watched my videos in the past, please let me know if you think the sound is better or worse, so that I can decide whether I want to keep using this microphone or not. And they begin their selection of the two editors have gone through all of the reviews that they've posted over the year to make their top selection. And they begin with this interesting little premise where they say, the motto of the year, don't be boring, broaden your horizons. The A-listers were mostly absent this year, and when they appeared, they were disappointing. McEwan, Adichie. Now, I've not read Ian McEwan's most recent novel, and I've heard very mixed things about it, where some readers have found it very powerful, and others thought it was quite disappointing. So I still can't decide whether I want to read it or not. I have read Chimamanda Adichie's most recent novel. I did feel quite disappointed by it, and also there's a lot of issues around her, the author, as well, so which I'm not going to get into now. And they say the stars of 2025 instead were bright young things and veteran oddballs. I love that phrase of veteran oddballs. And much of the top-tier stuff was translated fiction, fittingly given readers are flocking to the genre. That's really exciting to see. Now, the very first book they list on their top fiction choices is Shadow Ticket by Thomas Pynchon. A living literary legend, now 88, returns with a masterpiece. The setting is 1930s America and Europe. The cast brims with private eyes, Nazi thugs, and wisecracking broads. Shadow Ticket reads like a vintage tale of adventure. Don't quail at the stories of Pynchon's style being difficult. This one's a hard-boiled treat. Now, no, I've not read this yet, or barely any Thomas Pynchon, except for The Crime of Lot 49, because that's the one everyone reads, because it's so short. And when I have tried reading him in the past, I think I did start trying to read Gravity's Rainbow, and did find it really dense and difficult to get through. But this was, I think, in my late teens that I tried reading this, so maybe if I tried reading him now, I would find him more approachable, but I've always found Pynchon's writing to be quite intimidating, and yes, I'm one of those that think, oh, that's a difficult author, do I want to read them? And I've also heard very mixed things about this new book, so maybe I should go back and read one of his classic titles before getting to this new one. But if you've read it, let me know what you think. The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai, and they comment, with her last novel, 2006, The Inheritance of Loss, Desai won the Booker Prize, with this one a doorstopper of a romance. She almost won it again. We follow two young star-crossed Indians across Vermont, London, and Goa. It's a beautiful and often hilarious satire of youth, artistic ambition, and the immigrant dream. And yeah, I would largely agree with that. I mean, I think it's, because it's called Sonia and Sunny, because their parents tried to arrange for them to be married. It is kind of marketed as a romance, but I think romance really isn't the central thing in it. I mean, there is a romance element to it, but it's really about these two individuals and their paths in life and trying to figure out where they fit in with the world and how to achieve their artistic and professional ambitions. That's something I would say about this book, and it is a great big family epic that is also, about family connections and how those connections can be strained, especially when different family members move across the world. But there's also lots of infighting within these families that stay within India as well. And there's just so much in this story that's really impressive and enjoyable. I don't think all of the elements work, which is maybe why it didn't win this year's Booker Prize, but I know lots of people have been reading this and I would love to discuss it more. Flesh by David Szalay. Heard that fiction has given up on men? Not at all. Restless and sex-obsessed, the protagonists in Szalay's books are studies in troubled masculinity. This novel, which won this year's Booker Prize, is magnificent. Szalay told us in an interview this spring that he wants to dismantle the liberal sense of moral certainty. Okay, so that's a really interesting note to end on. I was so happy to see this book win this year's Booker Prize, and I think the pared down style of his prose gets at this emotional core of the protagonist, and I think that either works for readers or it doesn't work for readers. And if you start reading this book, you can tell, I think, quite soon if this is a novel which is going to work for you or not. And I do accept that it doesn't work for all readers, but something about it winning this year's Booker Prize is, I think, it's the judges saying maybe this book is worth another look to see if there are deeper things going on inside of it. And yes, it is a kind of burrowing into the meaning and manifestation of modern masculinity, but it is also about capitalism and class and striving to achieve a different class. I mean, it's in a way it's a quite Dickensian tale about a man that comes from relatively little and has a very troubled background, but then ascends to the upper echelons of society, and then what happens then, and following that very dramatic story. I mean, I would say again with this novel, not everything about it entirely worked for me, and there are some scenes later on which I kind of questioned, which I won't get into because I don't want to give any spoilers, but I would definitely recommend this novel. The Expansion Project by Ben Pester. One day, an ordinary man takes his daughter to work, but as they reach Cap Meadow Business Park, she vanishes. Fog descends, and the area begins to mutate, adding noodle bars and waffle houses, swallowing people whole. This debut by a young British talent, both office satire and weird thriller, is that rare thing. Unique. And I've been really wanting to read this book ever since it was shortlisted for this year's Goldsmiths Prize. And the premise, I think, sounds so intriguing, and I do love novels that are set in a workplace to kind of dismantle the weird workings of the modern-day workplace. The City Changes Its Face by Eimear McBride. Do you remember being young and in love? McBride's fourth novel returns us to 1990s London, where 20-year-old Ellie, whom we met in an earlier book, The Lesser Bohemians, and her middle-aged lover Stephen, survey their collapsing relationship. Few writers give period detail more evocatively and describe sex more breathtakingly. And yes, I read this novel, and I had read her previous novel, The Lesser Bohemians, and so this is a kind of sequel to that. I'm following the continuing relationship between these two individuals who are in very different ages from each other in very different places in their lives, but do have this genuine, very close connection with each other. There are sections of this book that I found to be, it felt to me like listening in on other couples' arguments that are quite circular, and so I did become impatient with parts of this book, but it is very innovative in its style and its method. No one writes like Eimear McBride in describing her characters' consciousness and the portrayal of that. And it takes, there's such a unique section where some of the characters are watching a film and how that is related, and the character's response to this film I think is so unique. This film that is very personal to their lives. Yeah, it's a book that I had to reread a number of sections of it to feel like I really understood what was going on, and I often find that with Eimear McBride's writing, because it is so different, and often I will read it aloud because I feel like the prose and the meaning of what she is doing comes alive in that way. So it's a book that I don't know if I'd entirely recommend. Definitely if you've not read The Lesser Bohemians, I think you might struggle a bit. I think it couldn't be read independently on its own, but it does help to know about this couple's relationship thus far. Shibboleth by Thomas Peermohamed Lambert. A whip-smart satire of Oxford's identity politics, this splendid debut sends up the silliest excuses of student activists and identity politics, and manages to do it all in the style of a 19th century novel. Comic fiction has an impressive new voice. Now, I think this is where this description and probably some of the other descriptions reveal that this is a more right-leaning newspaper politically, and so kind of send-up of student activists and identity politics is something that they would revel over. This isn't a book that I have come across before at all, but yeah, that I would be interested in looking into and finding more about now. The Wax Child by Olga Ravn. I'm still never sure how to pronounce her name, and it's translated by Martin Aitken. Ravn is one of Europe's brightest young writers. The Danes' eerie sci-fi tale, The Employees, almost won the International Booker in 2021. This one, about a 17th century Danish witch trial, tells a sinister tale of magic, violence, and the lethal power of the imagination. And yes, I was a huge fan of her previous novel, The Employees, and I keep seeing this book on the shelves in bookstores, and I come very close to buying it, and I will buy it before the end of the year, because yes, I do really want to read this book, or maybe I'll put it on my Christmas wish list, and then if I don't get it for Christmas, then I will definitely go out and buy it myself. The Director by Daniel Kehlmann, translated by Ross Benjamin. Heard the strange tale of the visionary director stuck in Goebbels' fist? Kehlmann's seventh novel reconceives the life of G.W. Pabst, the Austrian director who is both contemporary and compatriot to Fritz Lang. Engrossing and disturbing by turns, it proves his mastery of the historical form. And I have seen mention of this, but I've not read it yet. But I'd really like to read this, because I read Kehlmann's previous novel called Till, which I thought was excellent. So imaginative and a really different way of telling a historical novel. And I have a keen interest in film as well. So yes, would like to read this. The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovits. Markovitz's 12th novel depicts a middle-aged couple whose relationship is on the brink, leading the husband to set off on a solo road trip. Fluently written and effortlessly wise about the difficulties of marriage, it owes much to both Updike and Ford. Now, I have read this. It was on the Booker Prize shortlist. It was my least favorite book on the shortlist, and I think if I'd read this book outside of a Book Prize context, I would have thought it was fine. But reading it in that context, my standards were quite high. I thought the prose style was fairly simple and straightforward, which can be really effective, but I think all of the details in it, it didn't always add up to as much as I wanted to be, or for it to be meaningful for me. I know other readers have really connected to it and related to it. When I saw Ben Markovits read from it and talk about it, he was really charming and funny, and yeah, I didn't know this was his 12th novel that he's written so very much. Perspectives by Laurent Binet, translated by Sam Taylor. A magnificent murder mystery set in Michelangelo's Florence. No reader of historical fiction could resist this thrilling French novel told entirely through the medium of society letters, which sees the great biography Giorgio Vasari investigate the death of a controversial artist. I think that sounds so good. I love epistolary novels, novels that are all told in letters. I think that's such a unique form of storytelling and really impactful. I've not read this author yet, although I have a previous novel of theirs on my shelf, just behind me here, actually. It is... There we go, Civilizations, which I bought because my friend Sarah highly, highly recommended this book. I've still not read it, shamefully. It's just been sitting here on my shelves for ages. So I think I'll get to this first, but I do definitely want to get a copy of this book. It's going down on my Christmas wish list because, I think the story of that and the form of it sounds so good. Jesus Christ Kinski by Benjamin Myers. Klaus Kinski was one of the world's most controversial and physically dangerous actors. Myers' novel, born of a real-life lockdown obsession, retells via a demented monologue the time Kinski decided to play Jesus Christ on stage in front of an audience of rebellious German youths. What an intriguing premise, and I had not heard of this novel before this list, even though I'm a fan of Benjamin Myers' work. I've read, I think, three of his novels previously. His novel Cuddy is absolutely brilliant, as are the other books I've read by him, and he writes in a real diverse range of styles. He often portrays rural life in his fiction in a really beautiful and poignant way, and this sounds like a very different kind of story by him that I'd be hugely intrigued by. So another one that's going down on my Christmas wish list, and if I do not get it, it's not under the tree, then I will go out and buy it for myself. Call Me Ishmaelle by Xiaolu Guo. Any retelling of a classic is risky, but this is one of the most accomplished in years. Guo flips the gender of Melville's protagonist, gives her a rich backstory of poverty in England, and turns the greatest whale hunt in literature into a woman's search for her own soul. Now, this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, at the very beginning of the year when I was looking at publications coming out, because I have read a book by Xiaolu Guo before. I thought it was really compelling and fascinating. And of course this, it's such an ambitious premise, as they say in there. But when it came out, there were such mixed reviews about it. I thought, I don't know if this is worth my time. But it is, if I know some have gone on the big project of going back and reading or rereading Herman Melville's great big classic of Moby Dick before getting to this new book, and if I was going to read it, I think that's the route I would like to take, although that is obviously a massive time commitment. But yeah, it's a journey I would like to go on. Small Boat by Vincent Delecroix, translated by Helen Stevenson. Delecroix's slim novel, elegant and philosophical, should have won the International Booker this year. Ooh, controversial. It follows a French Coast Guard officer who's accused of presiding over a mass migrant drowning in La Manche. But she suggests when it comes to these daily catastrophes, blame is a darker and deeper affair. And yes, I read this. I found it really powerful and thought-provoking as well. I mean, it's such a topical issue, a really much more complex one than is often portrayed in the media, and the time it takes to really burrow into the meaning of the terms that are used, the whole operations to do around migration, and following one individual in particular as she is interrogated and kind of interrogates herself, I found to be really, really impactful. On the Clock by Clare Baglin and translated by Jordan Stump. Does work actually change with each generation? In this thoughtful French debut, a young woman gets a job at a fast food restaurant, facing oddball customers and tyrannical supervisors alike. Baglin cleverly braids those present-day experiences into memories of the exhausting factory where the narrator's father worked. And I've not heard of this novel before this list, but I think this sounds so good, and I do love novels that are set in fast food restaurants. It's partly why I loved reading Ocean Vuong's most recent novel earlier this year. It's all kind of set around a fast food restaurant, and when I was a teenager I worked in a fast food restaurant and I have very vivid memories from that. So yeah, I'd definitely be keen on reading this. We Live Here Now by C.D. Rose. The fifth novel by an under-heralded British writer deserves for once the hoary label Kafkaesque. We follow a young art dealer who agrees to source a work by a mysteriously vanished artist for a shadowy buyer. Container ships, apartment blocks, art world snobs, drug dealers. The setup is J.G. Ballard. The jokes are Amos Phils. And this won this year's Goldsmiths Prize. So it's a novel that wasn't top on my priority reading list when I was looking through the short list, because the premise of it sounds so convoluted in a way, and I have seen mixed things about it, but having seen a number of big endorsements for this, then yeah, I am definitely curious to finally read this. Ask Me Again by Clare Sestanovich. Clare Sestanovich, young and American, writes about women who struggle to say what they want. Her first novel about sex, success, and transgression among millennials, like their author, is tightly written, another debut to be reckoned with. And I don't think I've come across this book before. It seems entirely new to me, and yeah, I'm glad to have been tipped off about it now, and so I can look into it more. I do really like reading debuts and finding exciting new voices. TonyInterruptor by Nicola Barker. Barker is another of Britain's wonderful outliers. That's a slightly different way of putting it from their introduction, when they described some of the writers as veteran oddballs, and I think Nicola Barker would definitely fit into that category. She once said her style was a pungent cheese that you're not going to want on toast. This strange and clever story bears that out in the best way, as it follows the chaos brought into one family's life by a heckler who stands up at a jazz gig. That's a very random premise of this story, but Nicola Barker's writing is often quite random, but does have its own unique genius to it. I think I've read 3 or 4 of her novels in the past. Each is so individual, and her style is so distinct and striking. Yeah, I don't know if I always entirely get on with her fiction, but definitely fascinating, a different kind of fiction to be reading, and yeah, and I find that really invigorating. So I've had this on my shelves because it has been one of the books I've been really wanting to read this year, but I just haven't had time yet. I hope to get to it before the end of the year. Saraswati by Gurneek Johal. In the end, we corrupt everything miraculous. That's the sentiment of this superb debut, the many plot lines of which converge on an ancient Indian river, the Saraswati, and the Narendra Modi-like prime minister bent on resurrecting it for political gain. And yeah, this another debut that I have been really wanting to get to and read this year, because I think the premise of it does sound so intriguing. And also, I saw this author in Edinburgh in August alongside Madeleine Thien, and they were discussing both their books, because sort of water and bodies of water are at the center of both of their novels, although they handle the discussion of them in very different ways. And he spoke very eloquently, and yeah, made this story sound really interesting, so I still do want to get to this as well. Earth by Deborah Tompkins. In a solar system very like ours, a young man from planet Earth travels to Earth, URTH, its newly discovered counterpart, Beyond the Sun, with immediate disastrous results. This smart blend of sci-fi thriller and speculative parable won the first novella award from the small publisher Weather Glass, as judged by novelist Ali Smith. And I'm so glad that they highlight this novel because I read this in December of last year. Was very lucky to be sent an early copy of it, and I was so glad that I was, because it became immediately one of my favorite books that I read last year. I think it is so extraordinary. As they say, it's a kind of blend of sci-fi, but is really more a contemplation about how we exist and live in the world and the choices that we make. And I know that that sounds very pretentious and lofty, but it's written in a very accessible and compelling way with a character that I grew to feel I felt very, very close to by the end of the story. And the final book on this list, Your Name Here by Helen DeWitt and Ilya Gridneff. Was Pynchon not enough? DeWitt is the novelist's cult novelist. Here she collaborates with the journalist Ilya Gridneff, an exciting new voice in fiction. This huge book, which they've been trying to publish for 20 years, has attained near mythical status. It's about the writing of an avant-garde novel, and like any high modernist text, it boils with strangeness and kooky humor. Challenge yourself. That's a great note to end on, of challenge yourself. And yes, this book has also appeared on other best books of the year list, and I wasn't aware of this book before reading lists like this, so I'm so glad I've been tipped off about it. Helen DeWitt is an author I've always meant to read, never got around to reading. Maybe in 2026 I will correct that and read some of her other fiction, as well as this book, which, yes, is going to go on my Christmas list, although often people in my life don't often feel that keen on buying me, kind of weird books. Like this sounds like a weird book in a very good way. It sounds like a weird book, but yeah, it's one that I would really like to read, because that sounds so intriguing, and that they've been working on it for so long. So I would love to hear in the comments below, what do you think of this list? Have you read any of these books? How many have you read, and would you recommend them? Do you agree with their choices, or are you interested in reading any of them now? Are any of them gonna go on your Christmas list? Let me know about that in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.